Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show and Happy New Year to our president and mentor from the Student Compass, Jake Horne. It's been a while. We haven't seen you, and I hope your holidays went well and hoping all your students are doing fantastic. And excited to have you back to talk all about this mentoring you do for the pre-gap year, all the college planning, all that goes into effect with gap years. And again, welcome back. How are you?
Thanks, Jill. Good to see you again, and Happy New Year to you also. I got to see my grandchildren, which was, made it all pretty perfect. So, it was a great holiday. But I'm very happy to be back chatting about the work I do and to see you. So this is a treat.
Well, thank you. To start, I'm going to tell them to visit you on your website. It's thestudentcompass.com. What other form of contact do you want people to have?
So probably the email. My email is Jake, JAKEHORNE 8216 @gmail.com. And I'll give you a telephone number for the sake of argument, 860-921-6158. And I'm happy to talk to anybody, anytime, just to chat.
Beautiful. Well, tell us a little bit about what you do for those that may not know anything about you. I've gotten a few months to speak with you and a while back, but I remember it's very critical, very important. You went through this yourself. People out there are saying, gap year, what's that? Fill us in.
So I've been actually working at the gap year experience, working with students graduating from high school, deciding to defer college for a year. Most of them actually do go off to college. The vast majority do. But essentially, they originally just simply wanted a break. Had been in school for 14 years. They've been living in their communities. They've been, under the supervision of their parents. And as all adolescents and young adults, they want to experiment. They want to go out into the big wide world, be independent. So the gap year really is probably their first opportunity to go out into the world, experience new people, new places, new communities, new cultures, without any adult really giving them direction, guidance maybe, certainly from me, but also from the people that they are spending time with. But basically, they are adults, and they are confronted by the day-to-day, in novel situations, sort of the day-to-day issues that you have to sort of negotiate. And, previously, they've been working within the context of their schools, their communities, their parents and family. And they were rules, and they were expected to live within those rules and to sort that out. Whether they chose to or not is another matter. But there were guardrails. When they go off into the big wide world, and I'm using that pretty metaphorically because it could be just about anywhere. True. It's really the first time where they have to make decisions, which then they have to live with. They have to take responsibility for. And in that exercise of figuring things out, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, but going back and kind of rethinking about how best to solve a problem, they actually begin to grow into adults. And that's what the gap year is really all about. Transitioning from being an adolescent kid to being a young adult responsible for yourself.
Learning more independence and getting rid of that dependency and being an adult. It's amazing what happens in this year.
And it doesn't, the problem I would say, more specifically in the United States, Western Europe to a certain extent, but really in the United States, the culture is such that parents like control. They increasingly, from the 1970s or 80s forward, parents have really been much more nervous about, their children's health and well-being, to the point at which they are a bit enveloping. They tend to direct, and they're very didactic. They tend to do this, do that, and it leaves very, very little room for these young adults to take responsibility, make decisions for themselves, practice making those decisions, and living with the consequences, and then learning confidence that they can actually make decisions which are good decisions without some adult sort of looking over their shoulder telling them, don't do that. And that's the beginning of becoming a independent human being who's in the process of self-discovery.
Yeah.
The age group is really critical. When you're 16 through 20, your brain is developing, hormonally it's developing, and it's wiring up in a way which makes the adventure of the world much more interesting, trying to figure out, what am I doing? Why am I here? What's the purpose? It's a very sort of curious time. And adolescents, really, young adolescents, older adolescents, and young adults, they're really trying to figure out what's their place in the world. And that's what this gap year is so powerful. It's such a powerful tool because it's really the first time that they can actually do that. And it works, amazingly enough. So, if they go right off to college, they're back right into the guardrails, they're right back into the structure. They are expected to perform in certain kinds of ways, and therefore they get very, very little experience in becoming kind of the adults that are expected to be taking on the world and responsibilities of the world when they graduate. And many of the kids that I have anecdotally come to talk with later on have talked about about what it's like to graduate from college and not have a clue of what to do, how to manage this world. So that's always been an issue for all adolescents, growing and becoming full members of the community and participating members of the community. It's going to become increasingly more important because of all the complexity of this society we're living in, which is pretty brand new. We've gone from an industrial manufacturing society to a digital, online thought society, and it takes a totally different set of skills. And so, yes, learning trades, learning hard skills is extremely important, but it's what you do with them that's really the most important. How you create things and how you build things. So that's what I'm trying to get is help these kids. And there's schools don't. And again, I know I'm blabbering on here.
No, this is good stuff.
Schools aren't trained to do this. Schools are still working in the 150-year-old model of being preparatory for what comes after high school. Yeah. And it really has to do with learning reading, writing, arithmetic, math, science, but not how it applies really in the big wide world in practical, reasonable, realistic ways. And without having those opportunities of experience, kids have no practice. They're clueless, by and large. So that's the intention behind the gap year. I've seen it work over and over again. I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and the kids that I see that go off in the big world will come back as adults, and they come back ready for college. They love the whole idea of going to college. And they're ready to take on making decisions for themselves about what courses they want to take. Yeah. And they've evaluated in this whole gap year process kind of who they are, what their values are. They've gotten closer to sort of understanding what a possible meaning might be for their existence and how, and developing a much more cogent, clear idea of who they are. What their identity is.
And I would love to hear how it works to work with you. If you could kind of break it down for us. I mean, you're based out of Connecticut, but you are worldwide. You're helping students and their families, everywhere. So what is the process of getting started? What is the accountability, the commitment, and, the time that we have to put in to understand this and work with you? It'd be great to just hear some examples, some stories, and to give people a little bit of a timeline. How long do you have to work with that student, that adolescent, in a sense, turning to an adult?
So, again, I'm picking on the United States, but Western societies also, we sort of are looking for the silver bullet. We're all sort of looking for the thing that'll make it work. And it'll be quick and fast, and we can move on. The fact of the matter is the human brain isn't wired that way. It takes time to develop an understanding, comprehension, and so as a result, the process that we do at Student Compass, it's a mentoring program. We work with students over time to kind of get at the nitty gritty initially of what do they value? What is their value system? and dig deep into that, because if they're going to make future decisions about what their careers are going to be or what their lives are going to be like, if it's going to be in sync, it has to be in sync with their values if they're going to thrive, if they're going to do well. If it's not in sync with their values and their sense of meaning and purpose, then they're going to be perhaps unhappy lives, even if they make tons of money. And again, I work with lots of kids who come from families who have more money than God, frankly, but they're not working well. And a lot of these kids are pushed into careers that they're not suited for. They just don't, but they're doing. And so they may be making plenty of dough, but that doesn't make any difference. They're miserable. They're unhappy. And that doesn't mean making money will make you unhappy. It just means that it's not the gold standard for what constitutes a thriving, happy, productive life. So I work with students initially, simply building rapport, have them get to know me, and having pretty deep discussions about who they think they are, what's important to them. And then we step further into what kinds of passions do they have, what things are of interest to them, and we really dig deep into why. It's a very Socratic model we use, which really has to do with constantly saying, well, if that's what you think, why? Why do you think that way? And not letting that go, because I want kids to be able to dig deep. Schools don't ask them to dig deep. Schools have a lot to do with memorization, facts, concepts, but they don't necessarily understand how they apply. They don't understand how they relate to their particular world. They just need to pass the SATs, or score well in the SATs. They need to score well for their transcripts. But that has little to do with how it applies to their life and their sense of what is possible for them. So, the upshot is we dig deep and we spend a lot of time asking those questions of what it is that makes you vibrate, what it is that makes you really engaged, and what's getting in the way, and what do you think you need to do? It's constantly putting it back on them to think for themselves, not as rote, but actually digging deep. And it takes time. It's a very different model than the scaled up models that exist out there, which are pretty, manufactured, and particularly job placement. People are in the business of job placement. I mean, it's to getting the first job. Great. Everybody has to get a first job, but that's just the first job. It's got to lead to some other things. And most of these kids, the Gen Z population and the Alpha generation, which is coming down the pike right after them, they are going to need to think about the future, not just the present. The present's relatively easy, hard, painful, difficult. It's a struggle. But the future is where they're going to be living, and trying to anticipate what the future is going to be like, and the energy and effort they're going to have to put in to think about what that future is going to be like, with all of the complexity of social media, technology, climate change, global transformations, a breakdown of institutions. I mean, it's very, very complex, probably for the first time since, in the American Civil War. I don't know. It's been a long, long time, and infinitely more complicated. So these kids need to be prepared. They are not prepared. And so taking a gap year is a tool for beginning that preparation. So in earnest, you take on this world in a way that is really productive and healthy for you, but also contributes to society. That's my personal philosophy, that, you can optimize, swell, it's great, but it's not just for you. It's for all of the people in your world who have made it possible for you to be where you are.
Thank you for that. And let's remind everyone, Jake, how we reach out to you, please.
So I'm a mentor at the Student Compass. It's in Connecticut, in Washington Depot, Connecticut. We've been doing this for 40 years. If you look online, Google, it'll probably come up first. Look up the Student Compass, one word, or www.thestudentcompass.com. And certainly you can get in touch with me via email, Jake Horne Horne, 8216 @gmail.com.
Beautiful. We still have plenty more time to chat today, and just wanted to remind everyone how we reach out to you. And always great conversations about the work you're doing and the people you're helping. And just curious, how many years have you been doing this for now officially with your business? I know you've always helped people all along and even helped yourself back in the day, but just curious, how long has it been now?
So I started in 1994.
Wow.
And there were actually only two organizations at that time that were doing this, mine and somebody who was in Princeton. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, Americans, it's not something Americans were used to thinking about and doing. Americans have been so hot to trot to get to college because college was always the gateway to, quote, success. Mm-hmm. And anything that diverts you off of that track is, has potentially, it's going to potentially derail. The fact of the matter is it doesn't derail at all. It amplifies. Yeah. But Americans struggle with that. Mm-hmm. And parents struggle with that. They don't want to lose sight of their kids. I took years. My parents didn't even talk to me for years. I mean, literally, I was hitchhiking around different places around the world. And, I would check in from time to time. It was all payphones in those days.
Yeah, I remember.
And, so they didn't know where I was. But then again, they were from the World War II Depression generation. And therefore, they were, everybody was a free-for-all. I mean, everybody had to make their own way. Now we're in a society where, everybody expects to be supported. And everybody expects to be directed. And parents even more are afraid for their kids. And to a certain extent, rightly so. I mean, this is a complex world, but parents need to know how to step back.
Got it.
This whole business with cell phones, for instance, and the iPhone particularly, there's merit in a cell phone in that, connecting a flip phone, for instance, connecting with your kid just to make sure they're okay somewhere, wherever they are in the world. The problem with the iPhone is that it is a constant monitoring tool, and everybody is so biochemically and neurologically connected to the tools that they're always looking at their screens. They're not in the world. They're not participating, not paying attention. Parents are there. Parents are always checking on their kids. They're even tracking where their kids are.
Oh yeah, the kids I just got those Gizmo watches right now. I did. Guilty, but yep. Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing wrong with that to a certain extent. But at some particular point, there has to be a letting go. Mm-hmm. Parents have to let their kids go. Yep. This age from 16 to 20 or so is the ideal moment because they're grown up enough. They can think. If they've been quote trained well, they are going to be going into their experience with a certain amount of care, but at the same time, without going out on their own, they have no experience, no practice whatsoever. So they're babes in the woods. Yeah. And the problem is today in this world, if you're going to thrive and in the business model to be successful, the skills that you really need are the skills that you learn in the gap year. Teamwork, creative thinking, being adaptable and resilient, dealing with difficult situations and thinking through, not reacting, but thinking through, and be responsible for yourself and your own actions. And that's where the great growth is. Literally up until the modern era, every young adult or kid had to go through a rite of passage to prove that they actually had the skills to support the community. Kids aren't expected to do anything anymore. The rite of passage has historically, within the last 50 years, been college, which starts off your freshman year drinking beer the whole time and maybe showing up for classes. But the upshot is that college is too expensive. It's too important. There's too much going on that is worth learning about and taking advantage of. Colleges are unique because they give you an opportunity to talk with people that you can have an intellectual and personal and emotional conversations with, and they can be close and intense, and you're getting exposed to really brilliant ideas. But then you need to go and experience those ideas as well, those concepts, and to make sure that, how they apply.
Well, what I love about you, by the way, in past episodes, we discussed all these future careers that I think this generation and the old way of teaching, not everybody is aware. I mean, we had a whole show, I think, or two, about you're helping people with these futuristic type of careers, right?
Sure.
And we call them careers of the future, which is fascinating because these type of jobs didn't exist. And I feel like the regular colleges, and maybe they're not so aware. It's like you need direction. And, we've talked about that.
Well, colleges are like big ocean liners, and maybe even oil tankers. It takes them forever to shift gears and turn around, to change track. And by and large, most colleges, most post-secondary organizations, like any business, you stick with what you know. You stick with what seems to be working. And there's nothing that's really pushing those universities to change, because they're all competing against each other. To be out there and innovating with new curriculum is, putting yourself as a university or college in jeopardy, because you don't know whether your population out there is going to respond positively or not, whether you're going to lose beds, lose tuition, and actually begin to struggle. But the fact of the matter is, it's in the universities where that vibrant, dynamic, new way of conceiving the world should and can happen, probably most effectively. I want kids, but it doesn't exist now, except little bits and pieces in most universities, some universities. The goal still is, we need workers out there in the big wide world. Businesses know that kids who go through college probably are better equipped to take on the challenges of in a business world. Therefore, those are the kids that are going to get hired probably first and maybe get the better jobs. It doesn't mean they're better qualified necessarily. It just means that they have, by going through the ritual of surviving college, they proved that they are worthy. Not true anymore. And most businesses are beginning to figure out they're looking for individuals. And I will tell you, this is the side, but it's attached, is they like kids who've taken a gap year. It shows initiative. It shows bravery. It shows the willingness to take risks and learn from new circumstances, how to cope and manage. And literally, they come away from their gap year much, much better prepared to take on the world. Certainly much better prepared to take on college in a way that it really needs to be taken on now, not just as a place to hang out and party or to pick up, casual courses and to ultimately graduate, but really to dig deep into this new world. And while they're still there, to dig deep and to be able to make the most fundamental and powerful experience for themselves, so that when they graduate, they're not only qualified because they graduated from college, they're actually qualified. But there's a lot to do with all the transformations that are coming down the pike. Hanging around the way I did at my college experience, which didn't work well, you can't do that anymore and expect that you are going to be have a great experience as a participant in your community and actually do something meaningful and something that makes you as an individual feel like you've participated and done something of value. Again, making money is okay, fine, but making money in a particular kind of way, I think, this is my personal opinion, makes a big difference. And if you're doing something that contributes to the health, well-being of the general good, of the general population, that's great. If it's all about building wealth for yourself and for your immediate family, all well and good, but that's not going to make you happy. And again, I work with people all the time whose families are disasters. Yeah, they have a tremendous amount of money, and they're constantly dealing with mental health issues.
Got it.
They're constantly dealing with struggles within the family, misunderstandings, and lost souls to be depression, anxiety, all that. So I'm sorry if I'm proselytizing here, but the United States is really geared for people being focused on making money. And again, how much do you need and what do you really need? But it's more of a question of how you go about doing it and who it supports and helps, besides just yourself and your family.
Well, thank you.
Sorry, that's a little bit of ideology, I guess. I apologize. But I think we're in a world now where we need much more of that.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. Great way to sum it up in our last few minutes together. How did you want to end off with everyone, Jake?
So again, I'm very happy to talk with anybody. Just pick up the phone, give me a call, and just to chat. I like to chat. I like to talk about not just what I do, but what this gap year experience can do for your child, or if you're listening and you're a Gen Zer, what it can do for you. And that it will. It's a life changer. There's no question about it. And there are few opportunities that make it possible for you to have positive life change that can enhance your opportunities to thrive in this future complex world.
Beautiful.
So,
awesome.
Call me anytime. Drop me a line via email, or go online and look up the Student Compass on Google and get in touch with me. Happy to anytime.
Beautiful. Thanks so much. And remind us one more time how we do that.
So, www.thestudentcompass.com. Jake Horne, JakeHorne, 8216 @gmail.com, or 860-921-6158. And again, I'm just happy to chat about what this is all about and how I might be able to support you or your child in thinking about their future and how they're going to build the tools to negotiate it in a way that's really will help them thrive and have a happy life, have a good life.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day. Happy New Year, healthy to you, and I hope everyone reaches out. Enjoy your day, and we'll talk soon. Thank you again, Jake. Bye-bye.
Bye, Joe.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.